Welcome to Season 4 of the Predator Podcast. Presented by Dark Knight Outdoors, our first choice for quality thermal optics. If you're a predator hunter or wanting to become one, you're in the right place. Here's your host of the Predator Podcast, Drew Schlim.
What's up, guys? Predator Podcast, Season 4. We are back for another episode today. I'm pretty excited about this one. As you guys know, if you've listened to the show for any period of time, my relationship with Dark Knight Outdoors is a strong one. And coming up here in a couple of weeks, we are going to be at the open season Sportsman's Expo in Wisconsin Dells, Dark Knight Outdoors, and myself. So we thought we'd give you guys a little bit of rundown. What is new? What do you need to know about? And some things to look forward to seeing at the show. And I have one and only Jamie Hoffman from Dark Knight Outdoors on today. So Jamie, thank you for coming on with me tonight.
No problem, Drew. I appreciate you having me back on for sure. I always enjoy doing the podcast with you here, and like you mentioned, we're going to be up at that Wisconsin Expo here in a couple of weeks, and I look forward to that too. I think you got me involved in that a couple of years ago, and I really enjoy that, and all the people up in Wisconsin, and even the people that drive from further away to come to that show. That show's been really awesome. So it's a lot of fun, and I always enjoy seeing you up there, and go from there.
Yeah, we are looking forward to it. Always a good crowd. And you guys will have to stop in, check out the new thermals. If you're in the market for something, you'll have a good opportunity to check it out, maybe buy it if we have it on hand, and hear from Jamie about some of the ins and outs about them. If you don't hear it today, you can ask those questions that you might have, look at things side by side, and it's just helpful in my eyes. So Jamie,
Sure.
let's kick it off. I know Rick's has a few new helmet mounted items first on the docket here, and can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, well, a lot of things people ask us on a regular basis is, hey, what'd you see at SHOT Show?
Yeah.
And so we did go to SHOT Show this year, and it was as usual, bigger than ever, and lots of new things coming out at SHOT Show. All of the companies had new things to show and demonstrate, and we got a chance to look at those, and obviously kind of, give our opinions on them and kind of go from there. Some of the products we do have in stock now. Actually, most of them we do. There are a few of them still lingering out there that just haven't come to fruition yet or gotten shipped into us yet. But Rick's has actually come out with something pretty interesting in the helmet mounted area, which is the Stride ST3 Lite and the ST6 Lite. The ST3 obviously is a 384 and the ST6 is a 640 version. They're great units for being helmet mounted. And the most amazing thing with these new helmet mounted binoculars is the price is pretty amazing. So the ST3 Lite came out at $1,000, which we've never ever seen helmet mounted thermals out at this price ever. So and the ST6 comes in at $1,999, so sub $2,000 for a great helmet mounted binocular. A lot of people out there are familiar with the iRay RH25V2, very, very popular unit. Is this or either one of these units the RH25V2? Nope, they sure aren't. They are really more of a dedicated thermal for being helmet mounted. They cannot be like the RH25V2, used as a standalone thermal or a clip-on thermal. It is really more of just a dedicated helmet-mounted monocular. Now, I've had a few people, ask me too if they could use it as a handheld, and sure, yeah, you could use it as a handheld if you want to. It's small, and when you use it as a handheld, remember it's a 1X base mag designed for helmet mounting. So that 1X base mag is going to be, and you can zoom them up to a 2X, of course. One of the things to point out on the Stride ST3 is that there is no thermal focus for that. So it is just set at an infinite range, kind of like your, just like the Pocket K3 or the K2 does not have a, focus for the thermal on the front of it. That's one of the drawbacks to the ST3, and obviously why it's quite a bit cheaper than the ST6. But the ST6, it does have a forward focus on it for the thermal, and obviously also for the lens as well too. So they do also have their old Rix Stride that has been since retired, if you will, or discontinued. It did come with a bridge. The new ones do not come with the bridge, but we do have the bridges in stock. So if you like the Rix style bridge, it's a little bit different. It is definitely a single monocular style bridge, but it can slide side to side for your if you want it on your left eye or right eye extremely easily. And then it's got some nice micro adjustments to it so that you can get it positioned perfectly in front of your eye and go from there. But the most amazing thing to me is how far these thermals have come image quality wise, and then also price getting cheaper, right? You can now get into, a great helmet setup with like a good quality Team Windy helmet for $2,000 to $3,000, just depending on if you want the ST3 or the ST6, and go from there. The other big thing with doing helmet mounted monocular setups is people do get confused with the different style mounts and so forth. And we do stock all of that stuff. And here at Dark Knight Outdoors, if you do want to do, or you want a complete setup shipped to you, we're able to do that right here and ship out a completed unit. Even if you want to buy the components, we can send you all the correct components so that you can get it mounted up properly, and you can assemble it yourself however you want to do it and go from there. So,
so yeah, is it compatible with like the Wilcox mount, or?
It is. It uses the same dovetail style mount, like and it does come with that. What's that?
Is it similar to the one that the iRay uses?
It's exactly like the one that the iRay uses, correct.
Gotcha.
It is adjustable. It does have 3 different slots in the top of it where you can slide it back and forth and go from there. The one thing I noticed that was a little bit weird is that some of the threading on the units is different sizes. But I have had success going out to the local hardware store and just getting a screw that will fit that size and just moving it around. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with it, but which might be a little bit of a miss. But for the most part, it's a very adjustable unit, and I do feel that they're going to be a very popular product from Rix moving forward, just based off of the prices of them and so forth. I mean, heck, who wouldn't want to get into? I mean, you can get into a helmet setup now for almost as cheap as a handheld monocular, which is fantastic. So, yeah. And then, another thing that has come out recently from the show is the Rix Leap L12R, which we actually had was out before we went to SHOT Show, but it was technically a SHOT Show release. Still very similar quality to the L3 and the L6R that is out there now. They did make a few improvements to this one, though. It does have a 2560 by 2560 round display. And, we always talk about everybody getting all wrapped up in the numbers and the the stats and the, everything, everybody getting confused. Basically, the thing to know on that is it does have it's about 2.5 times clearer display than most thermals out there do, but there is definitely starting to be more and more thermals on the market with that 2560 by 2560 round display. So but it's got a great display in it. They did finally add an internal battery to the unit, unlike the L3 and the L6Rs. When you do go to change your battery, it does shut the scope off and you do have to restart it. Is it the end of the world? Absolutely not. Is it a little bit annoying? Yeah, it kind of is. But for the most part, they did add that internal battery in there. And again, it's a 2-power to 6-power ocular zoom, which is the same for if you look at the Notpix, S70 or the S50R. It's going to be a 2-power to 6-power as well. And stuff like that. And I said S50, it's S60R. But all the Leaps now have a LRF built into the lens. Unfortunately, they decided to get rid of the scopes that don't have the laser rangefinder anymore. So those have been discontinued, and go from there. So, it does have a 60 hertz refresh rate, which is a nice addition to that particular scope. However, they did come out with a price that's a little bit higher than some of the other competitive scopes out there on the market. At the time that it released, the Notpix S60R was, $7,000 or $6,999, and they came out at $6,899, so $100 cheaper. And I would have to give the head nod to the Notpix S60R, even at the higher price. For an extra $100, I just feel like the build quality is probably a little bit better in the S60R, and probably more than just a little better. But also the Notpix S60R just this last week lowered their price down to $64.99. So now you can get the Notpix S60R cheaper than you can even get the Rix Leap L12R. So, at that point, I have to kind of say it's a no-brainer to probably look at the Notpix S60R. But another new addition out there was the DBH-D12. This is now more your compact style scope versus the Rix Leap as your tube style scope. I get the question all the time, what scope should I go with? And, it all depends. If you're using a bolt action rifle, I always do recommend a tube style scope. The DBH series is one of those that's a little bit of an anomaly, though, because that scope does work well on a bolt action rifle just because it has an unbelievable amount of eye relief on it, so that you can still see through the scope pretty well, even though you're further back from it. So, but the DBH-D12 was obviously, like I said, a new release out there, 1280, 3X base mag, 75 millimeter lens. This thing is not a small boy, man. It's a big boy sitting up on top of a rifle. It's big. It's a little bit on the heavy side. But again, with the DBHs, they do have the ability to marry a Kestrel to them. So for guys that are looking to, shoot at extremely long distances, I've got, some of my own customers looking at shooting coyotes at 900 to 1100 yards. And seems a little crazy to me, but at the end of the day, it's a great scope to be able to do that with, and then marry the Kestrel up to it. The one thing about this one versus the S75R is this one does come in with a 50 hertz refresh rate, so a little bit different there. But the 50 hertz and the 60 hertz, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't let that be it's not a deal breaker. One way or the other. I don't really notice it too much. 60 hertz is definitely better, especially if you're trying to lead, running, targets and stuff like that. And, the one downfall to me with the DBH or the compact style series of scopes is that there's none of them out there right now that have the ocular zoom. And the ocular zoom is where you can zoom in and not lose any resolution because you're zooming in on the screen itself. but at the same time, it's just a digital only style zoom. So when you do zoom in with the compact style scopes, it's going to, degrade the image as you zoom in and go from there. So one of the other things that we noticed with the DBH-D12, and didn't notice it when we were, at SHOT Show or anything like that, it's more of something that came about afterwards, is that the typical Type-C power port on the side of the scope, you are not able to add like an external power source to it and power the scope. So for some reason, the power port on the side of it does not work. And when I contacted Rick's about it, they seem to not know it. But then also had a couple different, explanations that it could not power the 1280, sensor, which we know is not right, because it does actually, power it on other scopes and so forth. So I'm not exactly sure why it does not work. But the only thing that the port does on the side of the DBH-D12 is it will actually transfer data, which most people are probably going to use the app to transfer the data anyway.
Right.
Kind of leaves that port on the side of the scope to be kind of useless in my opinion, and go from there. And I do miss the fact that I can't add an external power pack onto the side of it for those long hunts, especially if you get into a 2-day coyote contest or what have you. I'm really missing my external battery pack at that point and go from there. So
right, you got to have 4 other batteries to put in it.
Yeah, and it does run off of the 2 18650 batteries. So if you want to carry 2 other 18650 batteries around with you, well, then there you go.
Exactly.
You're going to carry the batteries and the weight one way or the other. Just depends on where you want to put it, and go from there. But one product that they did come out with, I'm not really going to call it a SHOT Show release, because it should have been released a long time ago, is the Titan T3. And some people are probably very familiar with the Titan T6 because it got released quite a while ago, and then we waited for the 384 version to come out, never came out. And well, now it's here. And it is the 384 version of the Titan T6. But man, I got to tell you, I really like this unit. Is it the ultimate in quality? That it might be missing a few spots, but man, the price that it came out at, with having a laser rangefinder and a 384 sensor in it, it looks great when you look through it. They actually improved what I call the one-handed operation, because that was supposed to be a big feature of the T6. The problem with the T6 is the focus wheel was so hard to turn that you almost had to use 2 hands to turn the focus. They have fixed that on the T3, the 384 version. It's nice. It's easy to use. You can use it as a one-handed operation for your focus, for your front focus. And again, it's just a great monocular or scanner, if you will, for the price of $15.99. It's pretty darn hard to beat. Anything else out there that I've seen that compares image quality is more up in that $19.99 range. So I really, really like that unit. If you say you have to have an LRF on, the unit, and if you can get over slightly weird shape that it is, that's going to come down to personal preference. So, yeah. So but I have been pretty impressed with the Titan T3. So that's one to keep an eye out there for. And I don't think a whole lot of people really are, too enthused with it, because the T6 was a little bit, in my opinion, maybe a little bit of a flop for the price that it came out at and stuff like that. But the Titan T3 is definitely a winner in my opinion. So, but yeah, after that, we went down to the Knockpicks booth and took a look at everything that Knockpicks has to offer out there. And it looks like Knockpicks for this year was focusing on the 1280 side of things, more of the high end, scopes, monoculars, binoculars, that type of thing. They did come out with the new Vista S50R, which is a 1280 2x base mag monocular. And, it is kind of the big brother to the Vista H50R, which is going to soon be discontinued.
Yep.
We are actually kind of running today, right now, through our last run of those thermal monoculars. And once they're gone, from what I've been told now, they are going to be discontinued. So, but the H50R was a 640 4X base mag versus the Vista S50R 1280 2X base mag. And so for everybody that knows how the digital, magnification works, everybody's like, well, why would I buy a 1280 for the cost and a 2X base mag when I can get the H50R for significantly less money, because we do have that blowout price on them right now. And just get one at 4X. And I basically got the same thing, because by the time I zoom that 2X base mag up to 4, I'm down to a 640 anyway. Well, I do get that. But the one thing that I can tell you is versatility, right? The versatility of having the ability to go down to a 2X base magnification makes it so that if you want to use it for coon hunting, if you want to be able to use it for hog hunting, it's definitely doable. Then if you want to turn around and go coyote hunting with it, you got the best of both worlds. And a lot of people will say, well, how is that? Like, what's the difference, right? That 2X base mag is going to give you a lot larger field of view. And
that's what I was going to say.
Is one of those
Big
questions.
Field of view.
Yeah, big field of view. So the biggest question that I get all the time is what's the difference with a 2X and a 4X? Why is one better than the other? Well, the higher you go in magnification, the better image quality you will get at distance. Okay. However, it also gives you a much narrower field of view. So again, if you go the other way and you go to a light base mag or like a 2X base mag, you're going to get a lot larger field of view, but probably not as clear of image at further distances and so forth. Yep. But the reason I like that 1280 is because you can do a 2X. It is a 1280 resolution at that point. It's a nice wide field of view. Again, the 1280 sensor is being used now not only for the ultimate in clarity, but also to give it more versatility in giving you that wider field of view. And then if you want to go out and zoom it up to 4X base mag, you're down to a 640. And then if you want to go up to an 8 power base mag, then you're down to a 320, right? But it's just it adds versatility to the unit. Unfortunately, that 1280 sensor is a little bit on the expensive side. Pops in there at $44.95 or $44.99. But I got to tell you, it does have a great battery system. It is a little bit bigger of a unit. It is a little bit heavier. But I love the battery. It does come with 2 batteries, and they are a proprietary battery, which I'm not always the most in favor of. But with my Vistas, in about 30-degree, temperatures, I'd like to say that I was out in colder weather than that this year, but the older I get, the more fair weather hunter I get. So, but long story short, it does last for about 7.5 hours at about 30 degrees in temperature. So quite a bit longer than the other batteries out there. But what else makes it a great battery system to me is that there are no extra chargers. There's no extra cords. There's like if you're traveling around, it does have a Type-C USB port right in the side of the battery. You can charge it up inside the monocular. You can charge it outside of the monocular and just plug directly into the battery with your cell phone charger that's already in your truck. You can leave one battery in the truck charging while you're out using the unit. You can come back to the truck, swap them out. You don't need to have any more than 2 batteries, and it's just a great system all the way around on the batteries. So great unit. I really like that one for sure. It's going to be a huge hit as long as people can swallow the $44.99 price and go from there. It's not for everybody, but again, it is a very versatile unit. And then they also came out with the S50R Quest, which would be the binocular version of the Vista, which is the monocular or the scanner version. Again, great unit. It's just like the other Quest S series, or I'm sorry, the other Quest 50 monoculars that are out there already, or I should say binoculars.
Yep.
But it is a 1280 2X base mag. It again, it does have an 18650 battery and an internal battery that goes with that one. And probably the most impressive part about it is it does have two separate screens, one for each eye. And a lot of people are like, well, what does that mean? What good does that do me? Well, everybody's eyes, whether you know it or not, probably are not equal in being able to focus, right? So when you have two separate screens, you can individually adjust for each eye. If you're 20/20 in one eye and you don't have as good a vision in the other eye, you can adjust that so that it never really is blurry, and it comes the whole image comes together better for you than ever. And it's one of those things that I don't think people really appreciate unless you have really fought to be able to binoculars in before, because some people say I hate binoculars, I never get them focused. That might be the reason why, right? But again, the simplicity of use on the Quest, how small they are, how lightweight they are, I just absolutely love them. Even the focus and the zoom wheels that is on the bridge. So it is actually like a little wheel that you can, operate with one hand. You don't have to hold them with both hands. You can hold it with one. You can, adjust the focus. You can adjust the zoom with it in the bridge. They're easy to turn. Man, just a great unit all the way around. I really struggle to find any other binocular out there that I like better than a Quest. So again, just a fantastic unit. So they also did come out with a few more monoculars in the Lumi series, but basically the only thing to know there is they just added more units with a laser rangefinder in them. They didn't really come out with anything new in that arena, but just added the laser rangefinder to more of those units. The Lumi, again, a more smaller compact unit, runs off of an 18650 battery. You're going to have to change your batteries a little more often, but if you want that super small, compact, fit in your hand, fit in your front pocket type of monocular, and the best way to describe that one is it's the size of just a regular laser rangefinder that you hold in your hand and go from there. But that's really pretty much all that Knockpicks had to offer, with the exception of they did showcase at SHOT Show the Mate 1280. The Mate 1280 is a clip-on. Some people are familiar with the Mate 640 that they had out. This one does have a laser rangefinder built into it, which is something that they did not have before. And again, it's a 1280. So it was a fantastic looking unit. I do think the reason why it has not been released yet, that it seems to me that they're probably still working out some kinks on making sure that things work right, so that when it does finally get released, that there's a positive consumer experience with it. A lot of people ask me, why does this stuff release over in other countries before we see it here? And that is the primary reason why. Nobody wants to get into a situation where, you get the product and then there's all kinds of issues and everybody have to end up sending them back. Not only is it expensive for the distributors, but it's also not a very good consumer experience. So one thing that was kind of neat that we did see on the Mate 1280 is that they actually had like a ring that went on the back where your focus lever was, and then when you actually turn the focus, it actually brought the data on the screen. It actually brought it closer together, so that when you zoom in, you don't lose the data on the screen, kind of like an ocular zoom does. So that was a really cool feature, but I think that might be something that they're working on perfecting as well too. So that was a neat deal, and I do think that the Mate 1280 probably, based off of everybody's best guess, hopefully it will be out before the start of the next hunting season, in talking October, November timeframe. So hopefully we get to see something like that by then. So Pulsar, again, I think we've talked about it year over year. Pulsar's been a little bit of a struggle out there. They've been having a tough time finding their way. Seems like Not Picks and Ricks and some of the other newer companies out there have found some pretty innovative ways to come to market, and have kind of surpassed Pulsar in the customer service and innovative department. They did come out with a couple new units this year, one being the Trail 3. So they had the Trail 1. That was the one that everybody had, point of impact issues for forever. They came out with the Trail 2 after that. The Trail 2 never really could recover from the Trail 1 issues. And now we're on to the Trail 3. Little confused on why they chose the Trail name again, based off of past experience, but they did come out with an XR50. It's a 640 by 480. It's a 640 by 480, not a 640 by 512 like some of the other units are. Again, it's a 3X base mag, and the 18 millikelvin net D rating that it came out with is just, it's all right. It's interesting. There's other scopes out there that are already better than that. And then there is also another variant that is a 384 version, the XQ50, and it comes in as a 3.5 power base mag. It is a 15 millikelvin scope, so a little bit of difference there. One's got will do a little bit better in the high humidity than the other one. But I guess the one notable thing that I noticed on these particular units is that they are marketing them to operate in extreme temperatures. Most of your thermal scopes are rated down to -4. These were rated down to -25. So if you are going out in extreme cold temperatures, I'll be honest with you, I haven't tested it out. I don't know if they really do work well in -25-degree weather, but they do claim to have a little bit better resistance to the super cold weather out there. And go from there. And I'm probably going to have to get you to test one out for us, because I don't have much interest in going cold weather anymore. So
I don't want one. I don't want to go when it's that cold either.
Yeah. So it's one of the things that they did come up with on this unit is what they call automatic display deactivation, which it's just a sensor on the back side of the scope. I do think it's a cool feature. We've been selling, shuttered eye cups for a long time, for part of the purpose to, keep the light from shining back on you. And that's exactly what this does, is it will shut the screen off when your eye's not in it, to, prevent from shining back on you and go from there. So they're boasting on this particular unit that it has 10 different shooting profiles and 100 different zeroing distances. And that sounds interesting, but man, I tell you what, I don't know how I could have 10 different shooting profiles and 100 different zeroing distances and even know what each one of them are. So
I was gonna say, don't normally they have 3, right?
Normally between 3 and 5.
Yeah.
Typically, your ones that have 5 shooting profiles will have 3 different zeroing distances per profile. So that gives you more like 15. And then vice versa, if they have 3, then they usually give you 5 zeroing distances, which still gets you to that 15. It's just a different way to slice the pie.
That's interesting.
But now the 10 shooting profiles and 100 zeroing distances, I'm a little confused on how anybody would ever keep that straight. So I don't find that to be a great, additional feature, or one that's very useful, if you will. They did improve the display in this particular unit. It is a 1920 by 1080. Still not quite the quality of a 2560 display, but it is round. And it is a 1920 by 1080 display. So, still a great unit. The Trails are one of those units that have taken an extremely long period of time to come out to the dealers since SHOT Show. So we have just recently gotten them in, and we have not done a ton of testing with them yet. So news to follow on those. If we find that there's something really worth going after, we'll maybe do a follow-up with you and let you know that and kind of go from there. The only other thing that
it also looks interesting.
it is a different looking unit.
Yeah.
And at first, and that's one thing I probably should have explained there too, is that it is a compact style unit. Pulsar went away from the compact style unit several years ago,
Yeah, with the
and
Trail 2, really.
with the Trail 2,
Yeah.
and now they're coming back with saying, well, maybe that wasn't the greatest decision, and coming out with another compact style scope. I don't have one to show you, but the best way I can describe it is a mix between a compact style scope and a tube style scope. The one thing that it does have is it has a dial up on top of it that I'm not real excited about. There's actually some buttons on the side of it, stuff like that. I think that it's probably going to cause more confusion with current users than what it would. If you're a new user and it's the first time you've used a thermal, I'm sure you probably get used to it. But with the location of some of the dials and the buttons and stuff like that, I think it could be a little bit of a bigger adjustment, if you will, for current users. But yeah, and speaking of a lot of buttons, they came out with a Symbion, and the Symbion is a binocular, but it is a multispectral binocular, and a lot of people may not know what multispectral means, but it means that it does have two different types of night vision or night vision in it, and it may be either digital night vision or thermal. So this one's got both. Okay, so it's multispectral. So they're calling it day or night use. I hate that because you can use a thermal during the day or night. It doesn't matter. But this one would have a color version to it. And then also it does have the digital night vision, which means it does have an IR light in it and so forth, and stuff like that. It is big. It is a large unit. I thought that when Pulsar came out with a new binocular, they would maybe take a few notes from the Quest out there and maybe make it a little bit lighter weight, smaller, and easier to handle. And they went the opposite direction, and it's actually bigger than a Merger and heavier. And holy moly, talk about a lot of buttons. It has 7 buttons on top of it. It is, to me, pretty confusing. There is a dial on top of it to adjust the menu. There is a slide switch for the IR light. There's 2 knobs to control the focus on and off switch. There's 2 knobs to control the focus, and it's just a very complicated to use unit so far. We have had a chance to play with them. I definitely need to get a lot more time behind it in order to get used to it. But again, any unit that I have to spend that much time trying to figure out frustrates me, to be honest with you. And it does have a separate on-off switch. So we're talking buttons galore here. There's buttons all over the place on this thing. But ergonomically, the whole thing is just confusing. And even the focus that they did do dials like the Quest does, but they put the dials so far back close to your eye that they're hard to, ergonomically, they're just hard to access. The two dials that they did come out with, one's a DXT50. It is a 1280 unit. But the millikelvin rating on it is not good. It's back all the way up to a sub 40 millikelvin. It is a 2x base mag 50 millimeter lens. I personally have not had the time to check this unit out in adverse weather conditions, but just based off of the specs, it's probably not going to be good. They also do have the DXR50, The DXR50 is a 640 by 480, 35 millikelvin. Again, not the best rating as far as humidity goes. It's a 4X base mag. The 4X base mag out of a 50 millimeter lens, I am a little bit concerned about as well too. It's going to be a very narrow field of view. Even based off of their specs, it is a very narrow field of view. The DXR50, I have not received one yet. We have gotten the DXT50s, but not the DXRs. So waiting to see, kind of what that one looks like. But based off of the specs, I think the 4X base mag is, we've learned that the 4X base mag is, there's a very limited market out there that really wants a 4X base mag. So again, I will tell you the lens caps are nice. I really do like the lens caps, and it's weird to geek out over lens caps, but they do have really nice lens caps that snap onto the front, and they're easily to replace. And they have a nice system there for the lens caps that maybe even Knockpicks could take notice on their Quest and maybe do something similar to that. So, but yeah, I mean, so that's pretty much all the products that we saw, at SHOT Show. There, was, some other thermals there, but not all ones that we're really looking at this point. As, a business owner, we have to take a look at, are people offering as good a warranties, and are they offering a product that is competitive in price and quality with what's already out there in the market? There are some things that I saw at SHOT Show that I was impressed by some of the new companies. One of them that I think that we're going to start carrying very soon is some of the DXT thermals, and go from there. I'm sorry, the DNT, DNTs. But the DNT thermals, I was impressed with what I saw at SHOT Show, and I think they're not a premier thermal brand, but they do have some nice features to the DNTs, and go from there. But that is probably one of the things that I've been a little bit cautious about getting into until they get some of the kinks worked out on their thermals. Right. Also kinks worked out in their customer service and so forth. Okay. The one thing that I'm still a little bit leery of is, not as good a warranty as some of the other places and so forth. So, but we're working through that, and, we'll let you know if we do decide to bring those on full bore and go from there. So but more importantly than talking about, new product that's out there on the market, which I know everybody wants to hear about. I totally get that. But I wanted to kind of go over just some of the questions that we get on a daily basis over and over. Now that we're going into the late spring and going into the summer months, we always get, all these phone calls, people asking us questions over and over. I know you probably get them as well too, one of the biggest ones is just, is it worth buying a thermal scope now? Now that we're, hunting seasons for most states are starting to come to a close. Would you buy now or would you wait? To be honest with you, I get that question even in the middle of the season. Is this a good time to buy? When should I buy? When's the best time to buy? And I got to tell you, that's a really tough question. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm sure you don't either. If somebody out there does, please call me. I'll probably buy it from you. Yeah. But it's just tough to know, what is going to happen with these thermals. And, we've even seen prices go up. We've seen prices go down. We've seen things get hard to get. They may be popular, but they then become hard to actually acquire. And it's just, it's a tough question to answer. As I look around and as everybody does in the news right now, there's tariffs are, sometimes they're legal, sometimes they're illegal. There's world events out there like the war with Iran right now. Fuel costs are going through the roof. I just saw an article today that airline tickets are going through the roof because
Yeah, I
fuel
heard
costs
that.
have gone up.
Yep.
When most of these products are being flown into the United States. So what's going to happen? I don't know. I wish I had a great answer to that. The best answer I can give is that if you are the type of guy that needs a little bit more time to get acquainted with a thermal scope, because it is more complicated than anything than just a day scope. Especially with today's ballistic calculators and all that stuff, there's a lot to get familiar with, right? So I do encourage people to buy now and get familiar with it before the next hunting season. But I also will tell you, if you're going to be extremely upset that a scope goes on sale for $500, or a cheaper price than what you paid for it before the season starts, then I got to say you need to wait, because we just don't know what's going to happen. Now, the problem with waiting, like I said, prices could actually go back up. I'll be honest with you. I was blown away by the fact that Knock Picks lowered the price of the S60R to $64.99. Just absolutely blew me away. Right? I'm like, I even called them and argued with them. I'm like, why are you guys doing that? I mean, it is arguably one of the best thermal scopes out there in the market, and now it's even cheaper. But I do think that even that particular scope could end up going back up in price, just based off of all the world events that are going on and so forth. So once again, if you're a guy that is going to value having your scope through the summer to be able to go out and get familiar with it, it is so much nicer to go out and get familiar with a scope when the weather's nice than trying to do this all right before the season starts, and then you're rushing and you're trying to get everything done before you want to go out and just relax and enjoy hunting. Then now's the time to buy. And if not, if you're more price conscious and you would rather wait and see what happens. Again, these thermal manufacturers, they don't let us know when they're going to drop prices on stuff. So we get caught with it just as much as the end user does as well too. So I just don't really know how else to answer that question and go from there other than that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the other thing too is if you're really that on the fence about it, I would just get what you can afford so it doesn't hurt you that bad. If you're really on the fence about it, I encourage people just to get what they can afford, and you can always upgrade at some point. But
well, and the biggest thing is if you don't know if it's the right time or not, man, give us a call. We can give you all the updated information, because information truly does change daily. I have no idea what email I'm going to get from what manufacturer or phone call I'm going to get. And things change, right? Nobody knows. It is best just to give us a call and talk about it. And we can tell you. I will tell you that in my experience, if a thermal scope has been out for anywhere from 8 months to a year and it hasn't changed in price since it was released, it's probably getting close to being due for a price reduction of some sort. If it's a unit that just dropped in price, chances are it's not going to go any deeper in price anytime soon. There's always exceptions to that rule, and I know people have seen it both ways, right? But at the same time, if there's an older scope out there, and it hasn't had a price change on it, it's probably about due. But we can help walk you through that. And it's what we do every day, is stare at these thermal scopes and study the prices on them and we can kind of give you an idea if we feel that something's going to happen based off of what we hear from our reps and so on and so forth. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And along with current events, we've sort of had some events in the thermal industry lately that have kind of shook people up a bit. And one of them being the Rick's battery recall. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
As much as we would all like to not have ever heard of the Rick's battery recall,
Yep.
it's a huge situation out there. It's it's unfortunate. So what Drew's talking about is on the 18650 batteries that Rick's has. There's been a battery recall. A lot of people are pretty upset about it. I got to tell you, it's a voluntary recall. Okay. So what that means is you can send it back if you want to. You don't have to, right? There have been some situations where a battery has overheated. There's been some situations where one that I'm aware of that one of the batteries did explode. Okay. I've got to tell you though, it's one out of thousands and thousands and thousands of batteries, right? To have one explode out of all of those, it really makes me wonder what why they would do it, even a voluntary recall, right? But there then after that was some people bringing up, oh, I went to put my battery into my charger and it sparked, and then they freak out, right? A couple things wrapped around that. I will tell you, in my shop alone, I literally have thousands and thousands of 18650s ready for sale. We have them in every thermal scope that's in the packages, right? We have millions and millions of dollars worth of inventory in our shop. All of it sits together, and all of it has been there for 8 years.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem. So I am not disparaging the issues that some other people have had. One of the other incidences that I have been made aware of was that somebody had an 18650 battery in their pocket,
Yeah.
and it burned their leg. And I would never want that to happen to me. It's just like having a hot casing run, run down your shirt when you're at the range, right? Makes you jump a little bit. But the situation with some of this stuff makes me wonder, did the guy have a set of keys in his pocket? And a lot of people say, well, what difference does that make? Well, they're unprotected batteries, right? So, and even if it's a protected battery, it doesn't matter. If the two ends of them get contact with keys that are dangling in your pocket, or a big wad of keys, it's going to short out. So that is one thing that I would highly, discourage, is putting things like that in your pocket with a bunch of change or keys or what have you. The other situation with the battery that sparked going into a charger, if the battery, the 18650 battery, the outside of the shell of that battery is the negative side of the battery, the top of it is the positive side. And if it's got a button on it, if it's a button top or a flat top, doesn't matter. But the top side of that battery is the positive side.
Yeah.
If the plastic on the outside of that battery gets damaged or peeled off or anything like that, you do run the risk of it getting shorted a lot easier than if it does have an intact plastic wrap around it. And in the situation of putting it into a charger and it sparking, the only way that could have happened is if you had the top of it, the plastic started to come off of it or what have you. So, I think the whole battery recall was, in my opinion, a little bit premature. But I do think Rick's has taken the high road and said, listen, we'll take them back if you want us to. We'll change them out. I personally never seen a battery go bad. But I will tell you that if you ever have a battery that, starts to swell, maybe it starts to get hard to put into your thermal or what, that's a pretty good indication of a swollen battery. Don't use it, right? Throw it away and grab the next one. These batteries are anywhere from $29.99 a pair, maybe up to 30 or maybe even $50 a battery, right? But it's not worth using. So if you have any that have the plastic wrap that's damaged on them, either rewrap them or get rid of them. Just get a new one, right? If you put one in a charger and it starts to overheat or it feels like it's getting hotter than normal, then yeah, I'd replace the battery once again. It's all common sense stuff that you can do. In order to prevent any of that stuff from happening, I would say use a quality charger, number one. Go to our website. There's not a charger that we sell that's not a quality charger that has overcharge and undercharge protection on it. The other thing is to make sure that you're using the right wall adapters to plug in so that it doesn't supply more power to the charger than what is necessary. That's what I would do. I know Rick's has even come out. We do have them on our website as well. They've got fire bags. I don't know if you've seen those or not, Drew. But it's a little silver bag that is a fire bag. So if you want to charge your batteries inside that bag, you can, or if you just want to store them in there. But it's what they're made for is to prevent if that battery would catch on fire or what have you. It's supposed to protect, from burning down your house or what have you. So those are available out there. You can buy them if you want. We do have them in stock. I feel obligated to stock them just based off of, they're available. So, but I'll be honest with you, I don't use them myself personally. But I, also don't want to be responsible for, somebody that burns their house down and they think it was a battery that caused it and so forth. So the interesting thing that's kind of come out of this Rick's battery recall is that Rick's is claiming at this point that they're no longer going to sell any Rick's branded batteries. So I don't know what that looks like in the future right now, whether they go with a battery manufacturer and just sell their particular batteries. But I did think it was interesting to hear that the Rick's branded 18650 batteries are being discontinued. So we are currently out of them. I don't believe that anybody else, has got any available, but they may have still some lingering around out there, and go from there. If you are confused about which 18650 battery fits in your unit, give us a call. We've got all the units on display here. We can check different branded batteries, make sure that they fit. There are some Rick's products out there that require the longer batteries. There are other products like, for example, the Storm S6 had this one earlier this morning, the Storm S6R. They were wanting extra batteries for it, and it actually takes a shorter 18650 battery and go from there. And I guess to bring that up as well, common question we get all the time is, I bought 18650s off of Amazon and they don't fit. Like, what did I do wrong? They're 18650s, right? Aren't they supposed to fit? Lithium ion batteries, and that's what these are. Lithium ion 18650 batteries. There's no real standard like a AA or a AAA battery as people understand it. AA, AAA, 9-volt D cell, C cell batteries. Super easy because you always know that they're going to fit because there's a standard wrapped around that. There are 18650 batteries that are longer in length that won't fit in certain products, leading to a lot of people's frustrations. But once again, if you ever have any questions on, what battery fits in what unit and which one we feel is the best, I will tell you, we don't test every single battery out there in the market. There's literally thousands of different batteries out there, but we do have some that are our favorites that work extremely well. We've even recently just started carrying the Keep Power 18650 all weather. So they're the low temp batteries. And again, just kind of got them in here recently, but the low temp batteries, claim that they will discharge at a better rate, all the way down to lower temperatures. And you can use up to 80% of the battery before the battery actually cuts out and doesn't allow you to use any more of the battery. So one of the things that we've run up against is people using an 18650 battery, and the battery indicator gets down to about 25%, maybe even 30, 35, 40%. And then the scope just shuts off. It just cuts out, and they're like, man, I thought I had more battery power, and my scope just cut out. They don't know if they've got a bad battery. Chances are you're using it in super cold weather, and that battery decided to cut out because it's not designed to be used in that cold of temperatures, right, if that makes sense. So again, Keep Power came out with a battery that is designed now to be used in super cold temperatures and so forth, with still protecting that 18650 battery. Which kind of reminds me too is, when we talked about swelling of batteries, how a battery can swell. Typically what causes that is if you discharge an 18650 battery and it gets extremely low in power, right? Yeah. So lithium ion is ions jumping around inside that cell. The more that it's charged, the faster they move, right? The more it's discharged, the slower those ions move, okay, to create the power. If you get an 18650 battery that gets severely discharged and then you leave it in your truck, for example, in super cold weather, and that battery continues to decline in power or decrease its power because it's sitting there not charged and it's in super cold temperatures, it can get to the point where it can freeze and break or freeze and swell. Right? Or even if it doesn't swell, it can damage the internals of that battery. And I think that's what a lot of people are running up against is they're leaving their discharged batteries in the back of their truck or in the back seat of their truck. Their truck sits outside all night, what have you. It's -10 at night. And, you start having a battery that you're like, man, I just bought this battery and it worked great. And today it doesn't. If that's the case, something's happened to that battery that it didn't like. You know what I'm saying? And go from there. So, and the other thing is with 18650 batteries, they are throwaway batteries. Okay. Yeah. They are, one of these batteries that, I will tell you, if you use your batteries often, I would swap my 18650s out at least every 2 years. Not saying you have to do it every year, every 3 years for sure, if you don't use them very often. But if you start to notice that you're not getting as much life with that battery, I would swap it out. Go from there. Like I said, they're inexpensive.
Yeah. I'm also under the impression that, good practice for carrying around 18650s is you should not carry them just plain in your pocket. Like, I've seen the things on Facebook and stuff of people having batteries burn and stuff in their pockets.
Yep.
And I'm under the impression you should always have it in a case or something like this is how I carry mine, just in a little plastic, case, just so that way it's protected and you don't have these, things happen, hopefully.
And most batteries that you buy, like the Keep Power batteries, they do come with that little plastic case that you just showed there.
Yeah, this is a Keep Power case.
Yep.
It's an IRA battery in there, but
yeah, the only one problem with those cases is that if you do go out in extreme cold and you drop that case, they almost shatter. We do have on our website 18650 battery holders now. We just got done making them and getting them put in stock. So I'll have to get some of those up to you so you can check them out. But they actually, they don't have a door that opens up and closes because eventually that hinge will break on you. But it does slide down in. They are retained with a clip at the top, and you can easily just slide them in and out. So they're really a slick setup. We do have them in a 2 battery, 3 battery, or 4 battery 18650 configuration. And we are also getting ready to make those for to be able to snap on right onto a tripod leg. So that's going to be kind of cool as well too.
Nice.
But yeah, so there's some options out there to keep your batteries protected when they're not. We also do make some battery protectors for like the square batteries that come with like the Ricos and stuff like that. So check out our website. You might be able to find a battery protector that slides up over the top. It does help keep the prongs inside those square batteries nice and clean, and keeps them protected as well too. So
yeah, that makes sense. No, it's all good tips for everybody running 18650s. It's becoming more and more of a thing as, everybody, it seems like more and more scopes, everyone that comes out, they need 18650s. So it's all relative and good to know, and, a little bit of safety for your batteries too. But
sure.
another thing too that's kind of it's not new. I know it's not new to you, but it's something that's popping up as, a newer thing that I'm guessing a lot of guys aren't familiar with. And another thing that Rick sent out recently that I saw come across an email or something recently is sensor burn. So can you kind of explain what sensor burn is and how it happens and how guys can avoid it?
So sensor burn is looking at something that is extremely hot for a long period of time to the point where it degrades or basically ruins your sensor. So sensor burn is something that is becoming more and more common all the time, right? Like we used to never hear of it, to be honest with you. The reason why is because the sensitivity of the sensors were not as good as they are today. So the more sensitive we make thermals, the better that they're going to perform in adverse weather conditions like high humidity, fog, and rain. And when I talk about high humidity, I'm really talking about anything over that 80% mark for humidity, right? So the more sensitive we make them, the better they perform in bad weather.
Yep.
But it also is just like a welding helmet. The more of the protection that you take away to make it more sensitive, the more light or heat that allows to hit the sensor, right? So now that we're coming up with 15 millikelvin, 13 millikelvin, 12 millikelvin scopes, with a net D rating, all of a sudden they're way more susceptible to, sensor burn. And the sensor burn, what it looks like to me is, for a lack of better words, I wish I had a picture of it, but it looks like worms zigzagging around on the screen. Because typically, if you are out walking around, let's just say you leave the lens cap open on your thermal scope, and it's sticking straight up in the air because you've got it, slung to your back, right? Yep. And it's high noon and the sun's straight up above you. Chances are your thermal scope is waving back and forth at the sun, and there is a potential to end up having a line go around on your screen. And it almost looks like a worm that just did not hold still because it was moving around constantly, right? That is sensor burn. The biggest problem with sensor burn is that it is not a warrantable situation. Most manufacturers are to the point now where they will not warranty any of the sensor burn thermals out there. And again, it's because they're seeing it way more than what we used to as well too, just because all the sensors are becoming more sensitive. So the one thing that I would tell you is, I used to tell everybody, don't point your thermal at anything that is hotter than 500 degrees for a long period of time. And a long period of time means, more than 2 to 3 minutes, right? However, with how much more sensitive all of these thermals are getting, I literally had a guy walk out of our shop the other day, and he literally spun around, and it was during the day, and he was looking at the thermal, and the thermal flashed right across the sun. And I thought, oh man, I hope that didn't cause any problems. And I told him, I'm like, hey, don't point that at the sun anymore, blah blah blah. And I went to look through it, and just from that quick, really, I want to say it was a half a second that it was pointed at the sun, it actually had thermal burn in the sensor. And I was like, oh my God, he just, came over to look at some thermals, and he ruined a $2,000 thermal.
Right.
But again, as long as it's not for a long period of time, you should be able to work the thermal burn out of the sensor. And one of the ways that you can do that is by leaving the thermal on for a long period of time with the nuke set to automatic. Okay, so you definitely want the refresh or the nuke set to automatic so that it constantly keeps refreshing. Keep the lens cap closed, hook up an external battery pack or whatever you got to do to keep that thing powered up for a long, long period of time. And I'm talking about 3 days straight. If you do that, we have seen some of them work the thermal burn out of them. Some of them don't. But some of them work it out to the point where it's livable. Yes, you probably wish that you didn't do it, but there are ways to try to mitigate the thermal burn in some of these scopes. But with today's standards and how sensitive these thermals are getting, I would tell you I wouldn't point it at anything over 250 degrees for more than a few seconds.
Yeah.
Okay. It's always cool that when somebody pulls up in a vehicle is to look right in at the radiator and stuff like that. Boy, don't do it in the summertime when things are super hot, because those things, if you look at them long enough, they could cause thermal burn into the sensor and go from there. But if you ever do run across a situation that, you are seeing these squiggly, faded out lines across your screen, feel free to give us a call. We'll do what we can to help you get that, solved. But at the end of the day, it might be a warranty issue that, it's not a warranty issue. It's where you will send for warranty, but you're probably going to have to pay for it. And the sensor is a very expensive part of a thermal scope. If it's a discontinued product, I'm going to say you're probably not going to have much luck getting it fixed. If it is not if it's still a product that is in production, chances are you'll be able to get it fixed. You're probably not going to like the price, but it'll probably be able to be fixed.
Yeah, that's rough. And I know guys get these expensive scopes and they take awesome videos and they want to take them out in the daytime and record their hunt. That's what most people are using them for, I think, at least what I hear. But just be conscious of that and know that, where you're pointing your gun, your lens cap is closed, all those type things. I'm not saying don't use it in the daytime, but just be conscious of those things.
Exactly. If you want to use it during the day, man, go out and use it during the day. There is no issue with that whatsoever. Don't put it at the sun. If you're out during the day, treat it like if you're familiar with the old Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3 night vision, man, keep the lens cap on it all the time. And only open it up when you're going to use it. That is the best way to do it. If you're at night and you're looking at, a car coming down the road, man, don't worry about it. You're not going to burn any sensors or anything like that. In the summertime, super hot, somebody just, grabbed a foot full of brake or slammed the brakes on their car and their rotor's roasting hot and you go and you shine it at it. you're going to know instantly that it's super hot because it's going to be super bright on the screen, right?
Right.
Don't look at it for a long period of time.
Yeah.
That's the best way to prevent that and go from there. So
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
save you some bucks down the road.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody wants to replace a thermal sensor if they don't have to.
No, absolutely.
Especially if you have a discontinued scope and whatever. I mean, you're going to be uh, SOL on that. So
Yeah, discontinued or out of warranty, that's an ugly situation for sure.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we want to avoid that and don't do that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's most of the things we wanted to cover today for you guys, and just want to touch base again. The Sportsman's Expo in the Dells. We are right across from Whitetail Adrenaline and Working Class Bow Hunter. So don't miss us. And if you got a thermal you want to check out, stop in, check it out. And
Yeah,
if you
we'll
see,
have a lot of different thermals there, for sure. It is very difficult to take, everything to the
yeah,
show. But we'll definitely have a lot of thermals there, a lot of good stuff to look through, especially if you're a first thermal, buyer. It is a great show to go to be able to look through things, see through them and stuff like that. But if you don't have the ability to come to the show, we also, one of the things that we strive for at Dark Knight Outdoors is to get people into the right product the first time around based off of what you tell us you're using it for.
yep,
Everybody, asks me every day, what's the best thermal scope out there? And I tell everybody it's the best one out there is the one that fits your needs and your budget the best,
yep,
right? So at the end of the day, there is no right or wrong answer. There's over 120 different thermal scopes out there on the market today to choose from. It's a big pool of confusion, if you will. And at the end of the day, that's what we do. That's what we strive for. And not only that, I will put a guarantee that if you call me up and we discuss a thermal scope and I recommend something to you and you don't like that thermal scope for one reason or another, I will absolutely unequivocally get you into the right product. Send it back to me and I will get you into the right product, and go from there. At the end of the day, nobody wants to get an expensive thermal. I don't care if it's $2,000 or $8,000.
yep,
They don't want to get the wrong product and have something that they can't use. And we understand that, and we're definitely willing to work with people to make sure that they get into the right product the first time around. So,
yep. I agree. And if you are a tech guy, you have technical questions, you want to know about, millikelvin ratings and,
what's this mean?
detection
What's that
range.
mean?
A lot of
Yeah.
people ask the detection range one. Thinking about the expo, I remember, thinking back to last year, a lot of people want to know the detection range of things. Well, Jamie knows every single spec and number out there. So if you're wired that way, call Jamie, and you guys are gonna have probably a longer conversation than is necessary, but it's gonna be helpful and get you pointed in the right direction. So, but I do think, if especially, like, I get questions a lot about guys asking me about, like, a lower end thermal, or you know uh, for example, a Knockpix Bolt L35R.
Mhm.
Uh, somebody will compare that to another unit, and I'm like, man, you have not looked through that unit if you think that's a slouch of a unit. That's a nice unit, you know, like
Sure. At
you can.
$2,000, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm like, that's a great unit for the money. Like,
Yeah,
it'll give you that vision to look through it and say, "Oh man, this is way better," than I thought it was going to be. So it's helpful to
absolutely.
see through
There,
those things and realize that you're not just blowing your money on a cheap thermal. It's still a quality unit.
yeah, and the one thing that really has changed with thermals out there today is that the for the last 8 years that we've been doing this is it's always been a race to the clearest thermal, the best image, right? Because thermals started out when you first looked at them, 8 years ago, they looked like a blob out there, and so everybody was afraid that they were going to shoot, the farmer's dog, or they were going to shoot something that they weren't supposed to, and stuff like that. With today's thermals, they've gotten so good on the image quality. Even some 384s I got, if you remember, we had people that were blown away by 384s and swore that they were 640 thermals that, were actually 384s. The thermal images have gotten so great that is no longer probably the number one most important thing that people look at anymore. It's more, am I getting into the right base magnification scope? Am I getting one that is going to perform in high humidity, because I live in one of those areas where it's constantly humid, raining, foggy, you name it. And there's a lot of things to consider. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we understand what you're going to be using it for, and make sure that we get you into the right product, not just the right, thermal, but also something that meets your budget. Because at the end of the day, unfortunately, we don't all have unlimited, amounts of money to spend on this. And it's one of those things that everybody wants to get into the best scope for the money. And that's what we strive to do. And we feel that if we can do that for you, you'll be a return customer for a long time. So that's really what it boils down to. And again, we can sit and talk about specs all day long. I've tried that approach. People usually remember it for about 30 seconds and then they forget. But that's what we're here for. Give us a call. We're always more than willing to talk to you. If we don't answer your call the first time around, I'll guarantee you we'll call you back. A lot of times I'll send you a text and just say, hey, I'm on the phone, I'll call you back. But we'll always get to you and go from there. So, and we always do have time to talk and go from there. So feel free to give us a call. We're open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. We run some pretty long business hours, but you can talk with me, you can talk with Garrett, you can talk to Drew, you can talk to Joe, you can talk to whoever you want. The people who answer the phones here are extremely knowledgeable when it comes to coyote hunting and calling and all the thermals that we have. The one thing we won't do is, if we don't have the answer, we will get you the answer. We won't tell you something that is wrong or just to answer the question. We will definitely find out. And I know, Drew, you said that I'm, a wizard at all the different specs on these scopes and so forth. Man, there are so many out there now. I don't know anybody that can be the wizard for all of them, but there's times that I will, have a brain fart and I'll have to go back and look or whatever and stuff like that. But, one of the things is when we stare through all these thermals all day long, we can pretty much look at the scopes and the specs and tell you what it's going to look like. The biggest thing with a lot of these scopes is all the little nuances of them. A lot of people don't realize, and they don't see it in the specs, that when it doesn't have an internal battery, they don't realize that every time they replace a battery on a scope, that they're going to have to repower it back up. And is it a bad thing? No. Is it terrible? No. Is it the end of the world? Heck no. But at the end of the day, it's annoying, and some people would prefer to have that internal battery to make sure that they don't lose any, internal data, or they don't lose anything and go from there. So, there's little nuances to even the battery caps and, whether you can plug a magnetic cord into the side of the scope so that you don't rip the cord out of the side of the scope and cause damage and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that is a big advantage to, reaching out and just give us a call. I have a lot of people that call me up or stop here at the shop, and they got their mindset. They're like, man, this is the scope that I'm here to look at. And I will tell you 95% of the time they go home with something different, because they realize that what they researched wasn't the right thing. But yeah, give us a call and we'd be more than happy to help you out.
Yeah, no, I agree. It always helps to see them, talk to people who know the units, and if you're on the fence, call Jamie. He'll help you narrow in on what you need. So, on that note, we will wrap it up. Jamie, I appreciate your time. Everybody can come see us at the Open Season Sportsman's Expo in the Dells, March 27th to the 29th, and check these things out. You can check out these nuances and pick Jamie's brain, pick my brain. You want to talk calling, you want to talk hunting. We will have the whole crew there, and we'd love to see you guys. So
Absolutely.
Jamie's info is in the description as always. If you guys haven't looked at it or haven't called, if this is your first time listening, check it out. And Jamie, thanks. It's always a pleasure getting to talk with you and hear about all these good things.
Hey, thanks, Drew. I appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to support the Predator Podcast, check out our great partners in the description below. Follow Drew on Instagram at PredatorPodcast_Drew. Join the Predator Podcast Facebook community and keep up with real-time tips and tricks to keep putting fur in the truck. Until next time, shoot straight.